Story 1. Mark Dutroux was born on November 6, 1956 in Ixelles, which is a town in Brussels, Belgium. His father was named Victor Dutroux. His mother was named Janine Lons. Mark was the oldest of 5 children. When Mark was still a young boy, his family moved to Burundi. At that time, Burundi was part of the Belgian Congo. His father worked there as a teacher. The family stayed in Burundi until the country gained its independence in the middle of 1962. After that, they moved back to Belgium. They settled in a village called Obeix, which is in Hainaut province. Years later, Mark told other people that his mother and father had abused him when he was a child. He did not give many details about this abuse. In 1972, Mark's parents separated. His father left the family home. Mark finished school shortly after that. Then he left home as well. He found work as an electrician. He did this job for several years. In 1976, Mark married a woman named Françoise Dubois. They had 2 children together. However, the marriage was not happy. Mark behaved very badly toward his family. He was abusive. After some years, the problems became too great. In 1983, Françoise divorced him. She kept custody of their 2 children. After the divorce, Mark needed to make money. He started working as a scrap dealer. He bought and sold old metal and other used items. But this job did not give him enough money. So he began to steal car parts and sell them. He did this to add to his income. From 1979 onward, Mark was caught by the police many times. He was convicted for several small crimes. These included assault, selling illegal drugs, and trading in stolen vehicles. Each time he went to court, he received a punishment. But the punishments were not very severe. During this same period, Mark often went to ice skating rinks. He visited rinks in Charleroi, Forest, and Montigny-sur-Sambre. At the rinks, he behaved in a strange way. He would deliberately trip or bump into young girls who were skating. He did this so he could touch them. He did this many times. In October 1980, Mark went to the skating rink in Charleroi. While he was there, he kept colliding with a young woman who was skating with her boyfriend. The boyfriend's name was Armand de Bain. Armand became angry. He and Mark got into a physical fight. The case went to court. In the end, Armand de Bain was convicted of assault and battery against Mark. However, the court also banned Mark from returning to the Charleroi skating rink. Around this time, Mark met a woman named Michelle Martin. She became his mistress. He continued to see her even though he was not yet divorced from Françoise. Michelle would later become his second wife. Mark's life continued in this way. He had no steady job. He committed small crimes. He bothered young women at skating rinks. And he kept a relationship with Michelle Martin. After his divorce and his years of small crimes, Mark Dutroux became more dangerous. He began to plan abductions. He told Michelle Martin that it was easier to kidnap and rape young girls than to start normal relationships with women. He said this way he would have more time to spend with her. Michelle agreed to help him. On June 7, 1985, Mark committed his first proven abduction. He kidnapped an 11-year-old girl named Sylvie D. He had help from a man named Jean van Petegem. Petegem had lived with Mark after leaving the military. Together, they took Sylvie. Mark raped her. On October 17, 1985, Mark and Petegem kidnapped a 19-year-old woman named Maria V. from a town called Perons-les-Binches. Maria later told the police that a third man also took part in her abduction. That man appeared to be in his 50s. He was never found. On December 14, 1985, Mark kidnapped a girl named Axel D. During her time in captivity, Mark's accomplice Petegem told her that he was part of a gang led by 2 men. One leader was Italian. The other was described as crazy and stupid. Axel was also raped. On December 18, 1985, Mark kidnapped a 15-year-old girl named Elizabeth G. in Pont-Acellis. Mark filmed Elizabeth while she was naked. He also took photographs of her. Petegem later told the police about these films and pictures. On January 17, 1986, Mark kidnapped an 18-year-old woman named Catherine B. from Obeix, the same village where Mark had lived. This time, Mark had one or two other helpers. Petegem could not have been one of them because he was stationed in Germany with the army at that time. Those accomplices were never found by the police. During these abductions, Mark used several methods to control his victims. He kept them in places where they could not escape. He used physical force. He also used threats to make them obey. He raped each of them. He filmed some of the acts so he could watch them later. In addition to these abductions, Mark also committed a brutal robbery. He and some accomplices attacked a 58-year-old woman. They beat her and stole her belongings. One of the accomplices in this robbery was never found. In early February 1986, the police arrested Mark Dutrix, Michelle Martin, and Jean Van Petegem. The arrests happened because Petegem had talked too much about himself to the girls he helped kidnap. The police were able to identify him from those conversations. Once they had Petegem, they found Mark and Michelle. The trial took place over 3 years. On April 26, 1989, the court gave its verdicts. Mark Dutrix received 13.5 years in prison. He received a harsher sentence than the others because he had also committed the robberies. Jean Van Petegem received 6.5 years. Michelle Martin received 5 years. While Mark was in prison, he did something clever and dishonest. He convinced a health professional that he was disabled because of mental illnesses. Because of this, the Belgian government gave him public assistance of $1,200 every month. He also convinced the prison doctors that he needed sleeping pills and sedatives. They gave him these drugs. Later, after his release, Mark would use those same sedatives on his victims to make them weak and unable to fight back. Mark did not serve his full 13.5-year sentence. He was granted early release. The decision was made by Melchior Wathelet, who was the Belgian Minister of Justice at that time. The public prosecutor advised against releasing Mark. The psychiatrist who had examined Mark in prison also said that Mark remained extremely dangerous. But the minister ignored their advice. On April 8, 1992, Mark walked free after only 3 years in prison. After his release, Mark used the monthly government money to buy properties. He owned 7 small houses. Most of them were empty. He kept 3 of the houses for his crimes. One house was in Marcinelle. In the basement of that house, he built a secret dungeon. The dungeon was hidden so that visitors would not find it. Another house was in Jumet. A third house was in Sars-la-Bessière. He also kept a house in Marchienopont. On June 24, 1995, Mark struck again. 2 8-year-old girls, Julie Lejeune and Melissa Russo, went for a walk in Grace Holland. Mark kidnapped them. He took them to his house in Marcinelle. He put them in the dungeon he had built in the basement. He kept them there in chains. He repeatedly raped them. He also made child pornography videos of the abuse. 2 months later, on the night of August 22, 1995, Mark went to Ostend with an accomplice named Michel Lelivre. Lelivre was a drug addict and a petty thief. Together, they kidnapped 2 teenage girls. The girls were 17-year-old Marcel and 19-year-old Yves Lambrechts. The girls were from Hasselt. They had been out for the night in Blankenberge and were walking back to their holiday home in Westend. Mark and Lelivre took them. Mark kept in and Yves in chains in a bedroom of one of his houses. In September 1995, Mark decided to kill in and Yves. He had help from another accomplice, a man named Bernard Weinstein. According to Michelle Martin, Mark and Weinstein drugged the 2 girls. Then they brought them to Jumet. There they buried them alive. The girls were wrapped in plastic before being put into the ground. Around that same time, Weinstein and a man named Philippe Divers stole a van. They hid it in a hangar. The owner of the hangar found the van and called the police. The police took the van away. Mark and Weinstein believed that Divers and his friend Pierre Rochow had betrayed them by telling the police about the van. On the night of November 4th, 1995, Mark and Weinstein decided to get answers. They lured Divers and Rochow into Weinstein's home in Jumit. They drugged both men and locked them up. Then Mark and Weinstein went to Rochow's house to search for clues about the van. At Rochow's house, they found his girlfriend, Benedict Jadot. They took her back to Jumit and questioned her as well. Then they left again to pick up another person. While Mark and Weinstein were away, Benedict escaped. She ran to a neighbor's house and told them what had happened. The neighbor called the police. The police now wanted to find Weinstein. Mark realized that Weinstein was about to be caught. He decided to kill Weinstein so that Weinstein could not be captured and talk to the police. Between the 13th and the 20th of November 1995, Mark kidnapped Weinstein. He held him in the dungeon at his Marcinelle house. During this time, Mark let the two young girls, Julie and Melissa, roam freely around the house. They were not kept in the dungeon while Weinstein was there. Mark fed Weinstein food that had been mixed with rohypnol, a strong sedative. When Weinstein was weak, Mark placed hose clamps around Weinstein's testicles. He tightened them until Weinstein told Mark where his money was hidden. After getting the information, Mark took Weinstein to his property in Sars-la-Bessière. There, Mark buried Weinstein alive. On December 6, 1995, the police arrested Mark. He had been recognized by Pierre Rochow. The arrest was for vehicle theft, not for the kidnappings. At the time of Mark's arrest, Julie Lejeune and Melissa Russo were still alive in the dungeon of his Marcinelle house. Before he was taken away, Mark told Michelle Martin that she must go to the house regularly. He said she must leave new food and water for the two girls each time the old supply ran out. Michelle did not do this. She later said she was too afraid to go down into the dungeon. The two girls were left with no food and no water. They starved to death while Mark was in jail. Mark was released from prison on March 20th, 1996. He went home to his Marcinelle house. When he went down to the dungeon, he found that Julie and Melissa were dead. Mark later gave different stories about exactly when they died. At first he said they were still alive when he returned, and that Julie died that same day, with Melissa dying 4 days later despite his efforts to save them. Later, during his trial, he said they were already dead when he came home from prison. Experts later said that the girls could not have survived the entire time Mark was in jail on the small amount of food and water they were supposedly given. Mark buried the two girls in the garden of his house in Sars-la-Bessière, near the place where he had buried Bernard Weinstein. On May 28, 1996, Mark committed another abduction. He and Michel Lelivre took 12-year-old Sabine Dardenne. Sabine was riding her bicycle to school in Tournai. Mark grabbed her. He took her to his Marcinelle house. He kept her in the dungeon. He chained her by the neck. He starved her. He raped her many times. She stayed in that dungeon for 80 days. On August 9, 1996, Mark and Michel Lelivre struck again. They kidnapped 14-year-old Laetitia Delhez. Laetitia was walking home from her local swimming pool in Bertrix. Mark took her to the same Marcinelle house. He chained her to a bed. He raped her many times. An eyewitness named Benoit Tinant saw the abduction. He watched Mark's van carefully. He remembered the type of van. He was able to see part of the license plate number. This information would later become very important. Story 2. Robert William Picton was born on October 24, 1949, in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia. Port Coquitlam is a small city about 27 kilometers east of Vancouver. His father was named Leonard Francis Picton. His mother was named Louise Helene Arnold. Both parents worked as pig farmers. Robert had an older sister. When Robert was very young, his parents decided that a pig farm was not a good place to raise a girl. So they sent his sister to live with relatives in Vancouver. Robert also had a younger brother named David. Robert and David stayed on the farm and worked there from a very early age. Robert was very close to his mother. He loved her and wanted her attention. But his father was different. Robert rarely talked to his father. His father was abusive, which means he was mean and hurtful to the family. Robert learned to stay away from his father as much as he could. Robert's mother was a very demanding woman. She made her sons work long hours, every day taking care of the pigs and other livestock. The pigs were more important to her than her own children's cleanliness. She often sent Robert and David to school wearing dirty clothes. The clothes smelled strongly of animal manure. Because of this smell, other children at school called Robert and his brother names. The most common nickname was Stinky Piggy. This made Robert feel different from other kids. Robert did not do well in school. He had trouble learning to read and write. He failed the second grade. After he failed, the school placed him in a special education class. These classes were for children who needed extra help. Robert struggled to keep up with other students his age. When Robert was 12 years old, something happened that hurt him deeply. He started raising a young calf. The calf became his pet. He loved this animal and took care of it every day. He spent 2 weeks feeding it and playing with it. Then one day after school, he went to look for the calf. He could not find it anywhere. He asked his parents where the calf was. They told him to check the barn. When he went into the barn, he found that the calf had been killed and was ready to be butchered for meat. Robert was very upset by this. He had not known that his pet would be slaughtered. In 1963, when Robert was 14 years old, he dropped out of school. He stopped going to classes completely. After leaving school, he got a job as a meat cutter. He worked in this job for nearly 7 years. Every day he would cut and prepare meat from animals. This job taught him how to handle large amounts of meat and how to use tools like knives. After those 7 years, Robert left the meat cutting job. He went to work full-time at his family's pig farm. The farm was located at 953 Dominion Avenue in Port Coquitlam. He worked there with his brother David. They raised pigs, slaughtered them, and sold the meat. In the late 1970s, both of Robert's parents died. His father died in 1978. His mother died in 1979. After their deaths, Robert and his siblings inherited the farm. The family sold parts of the farmland to property developers. These developers wanted to build houses and buildings on the land. The sale brought in a large amount of money. The total was 5.16 million Canadian dollars. Robert now had more money than he had ever had before. Robert and his brother David kept part of the farm. They continued to live and work there. Robert also started to use one of the farm buildings for a different purpose. He had a slaughterhouse on the property. This was a building where animals were killed and cut into meat. Robert turned this slaughterhouse into a place for parties. He called it Piggy's Palace. He would host events there that attracted many people. Sometimes up to 2,000 people came to these parties. The guests included business owners, local politicians, and even members of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. In 1996, Robert and his brother created a non-profit charity. They named it the Piggy Palace Good Times Society. They told the Canadian government that the charity would organize events to help worthy groups in the community. However, they did not follow the legal rules for running a charity. They did not produce financial statements. They held a New Year's Eve party that ignored local laws. The city of Port Coquitlam sued Robert and his brother. The city said they were violating zoning rules. Zoning rules say what a piece of land can be used for. The farmland was only supposed to be used for farming, but Robert was using it for large parties. A court ordered Robert to stop holding gatherings on the farm. Later, the government took away the charity's non-profit status. The charity was then shut down. After the charity was shut down, Robert Pickton continued to live and work on the pig farm with his brother David. The farm had many buildings, including a slaughterhouse where pigs were killed and cut into meat. Pickton also had a small trailer on the property where he lived by himself. He kept weapons inside this trailer, including a loaded .22 revolver and boxes of ammunition for a .357 Magnum handgun. He also owned handcuffs lined with fake fur night vision goggles, a syringe with blue liquid inside, and a substance called Spanish fly that some people believe works as an aphrodisiac. On March 23, 1997, a woman named Wendy Lynn Eistetter came to Pickton's farm. Wendy was a sex worker who used drugs. Pickton and Wendy got into an argument. During the fight, Pickton stabbed Wendy 4 times. He also put handcuffs on her. Wendy was able to escape from the handcuffs. She took Pickton's knife away from him. Then she stabbed him with his own knife. After the fight, both of them went to hospitals for treatment. Pickton went to Eagle Ridge Hospital. Wendy went to a nearby emergency room. The police arrested Pickton and charged him with attempted murder. He was released from jail after paying a $2,000 bond. But on January 27, 1998, the prosecutors decided to drop the charge. They said that Wendy was a drug addict and her memory and behavior were too unstable. They believed that a jury would not trust her testimony. So the case was stayed, which means it was put on hold and never went to trial. After this incident, women from Vancouver's downtown east side started to disappear. The downtown east side was a poor neighborhood. Many women there worked as sex workers because they needed money. Many also used drugs like heroin and cocaine. These women were often ignored by the police and by society. Between the late 1990s and early 2002, at least 26 women went missing from this area. Some of them were indigenous. Others were white. Most were in their 20s or 30s. Pickton would go to the downtown east side in his truck. He would look for women who were alone. He often offered them money or drugs. Sometimes he offered them alcohol or a place to stay. Many of the women were desperate. They needed money to buy drugs or food. So they got into Pickton's truck willingly. They did not know that he planned to kill them. Pickton brought the women back to his pig farm. Once they were inside his trailer or the slaughterhouse, he would handcuff them. He would tie them up so they could not run away. Then he would kill them. He used different methods. Sometimes he strangled them with his hands or with a rope. Sometimes he stabbed them. Sometimes he injected them with a deadly substance. One of his friends later told police that Pickton said a good way to kill a female heroin addict was to inject her with windshield washer fluid. After the women were dead, Pickton had to get rid of the bodies. He had many pigs on the farm. Pigs will eat almost anything, including human flesh. Pickton fed some of the women's bodies directly to his pigs. The pigs ate the flesh and the bones. This made the bodies disappear completely. For other victims, Pickton used a different method. He would cut the bodies into pieces using knives and tools from the slaughterhouse. He had worked as a meat cutter for 7 years, so he knew how to cut up an animal body. He would remove the flesh from the bones. Then he would grind some of the human meat and mix it with pork meat. He sold this mixed meat to the public. People bought it and ate it without knowing what was in it. Pickton also kept some body parts as souvenirs. The police later found remains of victims inside his slaughterhouse. One garbage can in the slaughterhouse held the remains of a woman named Mona Wilson. Pickton did not work alone all the time. He had a friend named Scott Chubb. Scott told police that Pickton had explained to him how to kill women. Another associate named Andrew Bellwood said that Pickton talked about killing sex workers by handcuffing them, strangling them, then bleeding them and gutting them like animals before feeding the bodies to pigs. Pickton also had a video camera. He recorded himself and his friends talking about the killings. He also recorded his friend Scott Chubb. In one video, Scott said that Pickton told him a good way to kill a female heroin addict was to inject her with windshield washer fluid. In another video, Andrew Bellwood described how Pickton killed women. The women who disappeared had names and families. Their names included Serena Abotsway, who was 29 years old and was reported missing on August 22, 2001. Mona Lee Wilson, 26 years old, reported missing on November 30, 2001. Andrea Josbury, 22, reported missing on June 8, 2001. Brenda and Wolf, 32, reported missing on April 25, 2000. Georgina Faith Papine, 34, reported missing in March 2001. Marnie Lee and Fry, 24, reported missing on December 29, 1997. There were many others: Jacqueline McDonald, Diane Rock, Heather Bottomley, Jennifer Firminger, Helen Hallmark, Patricia Johnson, Heather Chinnock, Tanya Holick, Sherry Irving, Inga Hall, Tiffany Drew, Sarah DeVries, Cynthia Felix, Angela Jardine, Diana Melnick, Deborah Jones, Wendy Crawford, Carrie Koski, Andrea Borhaven, and Cara Ellis. One victim was never identified and was called Mission Jane Doe. Before the police finally arrested Pickton, there were signs that something was wrong. One of Pickton's employees found several purses that belonged to missing women. The employee reported this to the police. In June 1999, the police received a tip that Pickton had a freezer full of human flesh in his farmhouse. The police did not act on this information. They ignored it. In the years before his arrest, police searched the farm 3 different times. Each time, they found nothing, or they saw things but did not understand what they meant. So Pickton kept killing. On February 6, 2002, the police went to Pickton's farm to execute a search warrant. This warrant was not for the missing women. It was for illegal firearms. The police believed Pickton had guns that were not registered properly. When the police arrived, they arrested both Robert Pickton and his brother David. While the police were on the property, they saw things that did not look right. They saw personal items that belonged to women who had been reported missing. So they got a second warrant. This new warrant allowed them to search the farm as part of the missing women investigation. The police sealed off the farm and began searching. The next day, February 7, 2002, the police charged Robert Pickton with weapons offenses. Both brothers were released from custody, but the police put Robert under surveillance. They watched his movements and followed him. On February 22, 2002, the police arrested Robert Pickton again. This time they charged him with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The victims were Serena Abotsway and Mona Wilson. Over the next several months, the police added more charges. On April 2, 2002, 3 more charges were added for the murders of Jacqueline McDonald, Diane Rock, and Heather Bottomley. On April 9, a 6th charge was added for Andrea Josbury, then a 7th for Brenda Wolf. On September 20th, 4 more were added for Georgina Papine, Patricia Johnson, Helen Hallmark, and Jennifer Firminger. On October 3rd, another 4 were added for Heather Chinnock, Tanya Holick, Sherry Irving, and Inga Hall. On May 26, 2005, 12 more charges were added for Cara Ellis, Andrea Borhaven, Deborah Lynn Jones, Marnie Fry, Tiffany Drew, Carrie Koski, Sarah DeVries, Cynthia Felix, Angela Jardine, Wendy Crawford, Diana Melnick, and an unidentified woman called Jane Doe. This brought the total number of murder charges to 27. The police dug up the farm. They brought in heavy equipment, including 2 50-foot-long conveyor belts and soil sifters. They sifted through dirt and debris to find human remains. The excavation continued through November 2003. The investigation cost about 70 million Canadian dollars by the end of 2003. The work was very difficult because the bodies had been eaten by pigs or insects, or had decomposed over time. Forensic scientists used DNA testing to identify remains. They found about 80 unidentified DNA profiles on the farm. About half of these profiles came from males and half from females. On March 10, 2004, the government announced that Pickton may have ground up human flesh and mixed it with pork that he sold to the public. The health authority later issued a warning, but by then many people had already eaten the meat. The police also found evidence inside Pickton's trailer. They found the loaded .22 revolver with a dildo attached to the barrel. Pickton later said on a videotape that he attached the dildo to make a silencer. They found boxes of .357 Magnum ammunition, night vision goggles, 2 pairs of handcuffs lined with fake fur, a syringe with blue liquid and Spanish fly. They also found a videotape of Pickton's friend Scott Chubb saying Pickton told him about killing women with windshield washer fluid. Another tape showed Pickton's associate Andrew Bellwood describing how Pickton killed sex workers. In 2003, a preliminary hearing was held. The police seized the clothes and rubber boots that Pickton had been wearing when he attacked Wendy Eisteter in 1997. These items had been stored in an RCMP locker. In 2004, DNA testing found the genetic material of 2 victims, Andrea Borhaven and Cara Ellis, on those clothes and boots. Pickton's trial began on January 30, 2006, in the Supreme Court of British Columbia in New Westminster. Pickton pleaded not guilty to all 27 charges of first-degree murder. The first part of the trial, called the voir dire, took most of 2006. This phase decided what evidence could be shown to the jury. On March 17, 2006, one charge was dismissed because there was not enough evidence. On August 9, 2006, the judge decided to split the charges into 2 groups. The first group had 6 murder charges. The second group had the remaining 20 charges. The judge said that trying all 27 charges at once would take up to 2 years and would be too hard on the jury. It could also cause a mistrial. The trial proceeded on the 6 charges. On January 22, 2007, Pickton faced first-degree murder charges for the deaths of Marnie Fry, Serena Abotsway, Georgina Papine, Andrea Josbury, Brenda Wolfe, and Mona Wilson. The media ban was lifted, and the public learned the details of the investigation. On December 9, 2007, the jury reached a verdict. They found Pickton not guilty of first-degree murder on all 6 counts, but they found him guilty of second-degree murder on all 6 counts. This means the jury believed Pickton killed the women, but they did not believe he planned the killings ahead of time. On December 11, 2007, the judge read 18 statements from the victims' family members. Then he sentenced Pickton to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years. This was the longest possible sentence for second-degree murder under Canadian law. The judge said, "Mr. Pickton's conduct was murderous and repeatedly so. I cannot know the details, but I know this. What happened to them was senseless and despicable." The Crown prosecutors appealed the verdict. They wanted Pickton to be found guilty of first-degree murder instead of second-degree. Pickton's lawyers also appealed. They wanted a new trial on the second-degree murder charges. On June 25, 2009, the British Columbia Court of Appeal dismissed Pickton's appeal by a 2-1 vote. The court allowed the Crown's appeal in part, but the conviction stood. Pickton then appealed to the Supreme Court of Canada. On July 30, 2010, the Supreme Court of Canada dismissed Pickton's appeal and confirmed his convictions. After the appeals were finished, the remaining 20 murder charges were stayed on August 4, 2010. This meant those charges would not go to trial. The prosecutors said that Pickton was already serving the maximum sentence. More convictions would not add any more prison time. The families of the victims had mixed feelings. Some were disappointed that Pickton would never be convicted for the other 20 murders. Others were relieved that the gruesome details would not be made public in another trial. After the trial, An inquiry was held to examine why the police took so long to catch Pickton. The Missing Women Commission of Inquiry was led by Wally Oppel. The final report was released to the public on December 17, 2012. The report found that the police had made many mistakes. They had ignored tips. They had not treated the missing women as a priority because many of the women were sex workers, drug users, or indigenous. The case forced the Canadian government to acknowledge the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women. Later, a national inquiry was formed to investigate this issue more broadly. The victims' children filed a civil lawsuit in May 2013 against the Vancouver Police Department, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and the Crown. They said the police failed to protect their mothers. In March 2014, a settlement was reached. Each child was given $50,000. The government did not admit any wrongdoing. Pickton was sent to a federal penitentiary. He was first held at Kent Institution in British Columbia. In June 2018, he was transferred to Port Cartier Institution in Quebec. On February 2024, Pickton became eligible to apply for day parole, but no hearing was scheduled. On May 19, 2024, another prisoner named Martin Charest attacked Pickton inside the prison. Charest had a history of assaulting other prisoners. He took a broomstick, broke the handle, and shoved the broken piece into Pickton's face. Prison guards stopped the attack. They handcuffed Charest and took him to a special unit. Pickton was flown by helicopter to a hospital in Quebec City. He was put on life support. He died on May 31, 2024, from the injuries caused by the attack. He was 74 years old. In July 2025, Martin Charest was charged with first-degree murder for killing Pickton. He later pleaded guilty, saying he did it for Pickton's victims. The story of Robert Pickton ended in a hospital room, with no family at his side, while the families of the 26 women he killed continued to carry the weight of their loss every day. Story 3. Anthony Edward Sowell was born on August 19, 1959, in East Cleveland, Ohio. He was one of 7 children. His mother was a single parent named Claudia Garrison. People also called her Gertrude. Sowell grew up in a crowded house. His sister died from a long illness, so her 7 children also came to live in the same home. This meant many people lived together in a small space. The household was not safe for children. Sowell's mother, Claudia Garrison, was very abusive. She would hurt the children physically. One of Sowell's nieces, Leona Davis, later described what happened. She said that Garrison once made her take off all her clothes in front of the other children. Then Garrison whipped her with electrical cords until she bled. The other children in the house watched, but did not stop it. The abuse did not come only from the mother. Leona Davis said that the males in the house also hurt her. She was only 10 years old when the rape started. Anthony Sowell was one of the people who raped her. This happened almost every day for 2 years. The other males in the household did the same thing. Sowell went to school in East Cleveland, but there are not many records about his education. His early life was marked by violence and trauma inside his own home. On January 24, 1978, when Sowell was 18 years old, he joined the United States Marine Corps. He went to boot camp at Parris Island in South Carolina. After that, he trained to become an electrician at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. On July 13, 1978, he was sent to work at Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point, also in North Carolina. In 1980, Sowell spent 1 year overseas in Japan. He worked with the 3rd Force Service Support Group. Then he returned to Cherry Point. On January 20, 1984, he was ordered to go to Camp Butler in Okinawa, Japan. 1 year later, he transferred to Camp Pendleton in California. He stayed there for only 3 days. On January 18, 1985, he was discharged from the Marines. He had served for 7 years. During that time, he received several awards: a Good Conduct Medal with 1 service star, a Sea Service Deployment Ribbon, a Certificate of Commendation, a Meritorious Mast, and 2 letters of appreciation. After leaving the Marines, Sowell returned to Ohio. He lived in Cleveland. In 1989, something happened that would change his life. A woman who was 3 months pregnant came to his home. When she tried to leave, he stopped her. He tied her hands and feet with a tie and a belt. Then he put a rag in her mouth to keep her quiet. She later told police that he choked her very hard. She said her body started tingling, and she thought she was going to die. In 1990, the police charged Sowell with kidnapping, rape, and attempted rape. He did not go to trial on all charges. Instead, he pleaded guilty to attempted rape. The judge sent him to prison for 15 years. He served that time and was released in 2005. When Sowell got out of prison, he found a job in a factory. He worked there until 2007. After that, he began collecting unemployment benefits. His neighbors later said he made money by selling scrap metal. He also joined an online dating service. On his profile, he wrote that he was a master looking for a submissive person to train. A woman named Lori Frazier started a relationship with Sowell shortly after he got out of prison. She moved into his home. Lori was the niece of the Cleveland mayor, Frank G. Jackson. While living there, she noticed a bad smell inside the house. It smelled like decaying bodies. Sowell told her the smell came from his stepmother, who lived downstairs. He also said it might be coming from the sausage shop next door. Lori believed him at the time, but a friend of hers said that Lori stopped going to the home in 2008. After Sowell was released from prison in 2005, he lived alone at 12205 Imperial Avenue in Cleveland. Lori Frazier had stopped coming to the home in 2008. Sowell was now free to do what he wanted without anyone watching him closely. Sowell started looking for women to bring to his home. He targeted African American women. Many of them were mothers. Some were slender, and some were very large. Most of them were between 44 and 53 years old, but a few were in their 30s, and one was only 25. He met them in the neighborhood or through his contacts. He used the same method every time. He would invite a woman to his home to smoke crack cocaine with him. The women agreed because they wanted the drugs. Once a woman came inside, Sowell would give her alcohol or drugs. Then he would become angry. He would hit her. He would choke her. He would rape her. For the women he killed, he used his hands to strangle them. Some of them also had cloth or cords tied around their necks or bodies. This was called ligature strangulation. He did not kill every woman he attacked. Some survived the rapes and got away. The first woman Sowell killed after his release was Crystal Dozier. She was 38 years old and had 7 children. She went missing on May 17, 2007. Her family reported her missing to the Cleveland police. But the police did not investigate very hard. Crystal had gone missing before and come back, so her family felt the police did not take it seriously. The family put up flyers and called hospitals themselves. Over the next 2 years, Sowell killed more women. On June 2008, Tiziana Culver, age 31, disappeared. In August 2008, LaShanda Long, age 25, went missing. She was the youngest of all his victims. On October 8, 2008, Michelle Mason, age 45, was last seen. On November 10, 2008, Tonia Carmichael, age 53, disappeared. Her mother reported her missing in December 2008. On January 17, 2009, Kim Yvette Smith, age 44, was reported missing by her family. In April 2009, Imelda Hunter, age 47, disappeared. She was a beautician and a mother of 3. She did not live near Sowell, but she visited that area often. On April 24, 2009, Nancy Cobbs, age 45, went missing. On June 3, 2009, Talasha Fortson, age 33, disappeared. Her mother did not report her missing until she heard news about bodies being found later. In June 2009, Janice Webb, age 48, disappeared. In late September 2009, Diane Turner, age 48, went missing. That makes 11 women. All of them came to Soul's home. All of them were strangled. After each murder, Soul had to hide the body. He did not bury them all in one place. He used different spots around his house. In the basement, he dug a shallow grave and put 2 bodies there. On the 3rd floor of the home, he placed 4 more bodies. Some were in crawl spaces, small gaps between floors or walls. In the backyard, he buried 3 bodies and also some partial remains of a 4th person. Inside a bucket in the house, he placed a human skull. That skull belonged to LaShanda Long, the 25-year-old. Over time, the bodies began to rot. The smell was very bad. It smelled like decaying flesh. The neighbors could smell it. They complained to the health department about the foul odor coming from Soul's property. But at that time, no one knew it was from dead bodies. Soul told people that the smell came from his stepmother who lived downstairs, or from the sausage shop next door. Some people believed him. Others did not, but they did not go inside to check. Soul also attacked women he did not kill. He raped 3 other women by using the same trick, inviting them to smoke crack. They survived and later told their stories. One of them was Latundra Billups. In September 2009, Soul invited her to his home to smoke crack. After a few drinks, he became angry. He hit her, choked her, and raped her while she passed out. She survived and later went to the police. By late September 2009, Soul had killed 11 women and raped at least 3 more. He kept living in the house with the bodies hidden around him. He went outside to sell scrap metal. He collected unemployment benefits. He acted like a normal neighbor. But inside, the smell of death was everywhere. He had learned to live with it. Latundra Billups went to the police after Soul attacked her in September 2009. She told them what happened. She said he hit her, choked her, and raped her. The police believed her. On October 29, 2009, they got an arrest warrant for Anthony Soul. The warrant said he was wanted for rape. That same day, police officers went to Soul's house at 12205 Imperial Avenue. They knocked on the door. No one answered. Soul was not there, but the officers noticed a strong smell coming from inside the house. It smelled like death. They also saw flies around the windows. They decided to come back with a search warrant. On October 31, 2009, police found Soul on the street and arrested him. He did not resist. While he was in custody, other officers searched his home. What they found was shocking. In the basement, they dug into a shallow grave and found 2 dead women. On the 3rd floor, they found 4 more bodies. Some were inside crawl spaces. In the backyard, they dug and found 3 more bodies and parts of a 4th body. Inside a bucket in the house, they found a human skull. That made 11 victims in total. All of them had been strangled. Some had cloth or cords tied around them. The police called in the coroner and crime scene investigators. They worked for days to remove the bodies. Each body was sent for DNA testing and identification. The smell was so bad that neighbors stayed inside their homes. At first, not all the women had names. The police searched missing persons records going back to June 2005, when Soul was released from prison. On November 5, 2009, 2 victims were identified. More names came out over the next few days. By November 8, 2009, police had identified Crystal Dozier, Imelda Hunter, and Michelle Mason. Over time, all 11 women were named. Their families were told. Many of those families had reported their loved ones missing, but the police had not found them until now. The police also looked into cold cases from the late 1980s. In those cases, women had been strangled in similar ways. Those strangulations stopped around 1989. The same year Soule attacked the pregnant woman and was later arrested. The FBI started gathering information to see if Soule was connected to unsolved cases in other cities where he had lived, such as North Carolina and Japan. But no other charges were filed outside Ohio. Soule was held on a $5 million bond. He was charged with 11 counts of aggravated murder. He was also charged with 74 other counts, including rape, kidnapping, tampering with evidence, and abuse of a corpse. At first, he pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Later, he changed his plea to simply not guilty. His trial was supposed to start on June 2, 2010, but it was delayed several times. His lawyers asked for more time to prepare. They needed to look at thousands of records and many hours of video from a camera next door to Soule's house. The prosecution also asked for a delay because of scheduling. Finally, the trial began on June 6, 2011. During the trial, the prosecution presented the evidence. They showed how Soule lured women with drugs, strangled them, and hid their bodies around his house. They brought in the women who survived his attacks, including Latundra Billups. Soule's lawyers argued that he was not guilty, but they did not deny that the bodies were found in his home. The jury saw the crime scene photos and heard from the medical examiner. On July 22, 2011, the jury found Soule guilty on all but 2 of the charges. He was convicted of murdering all 11 women. On August 10, 2011, the same jury recommended the death penalty. The judge, Dick Ambrose, agreed with the jury. On August 12, 2011, he sentenced Soule to death. On September 14, 2011, Soule was placed on death row at the Chillicothe Correctional Institution. After the sentence, Soule's lawyers appealed. They filed an appeal with the Supreme Court of Ohio. His execution was first set for October 29, 2012, but the court granted a stay. In October 2012, his new lawyers argued that his trial was not fair. They said there was too much media coverage. They said the courtroom was closed to the public during some parts of the trial. They also said his first lawyers did a bad job. In September 2014, the court asked both sides to address these issues. On April 5, 2016, the Ohio Supreme Court heard arguments. On December 8, 2016, the court rejected Soule's appeal. They upheld his convictions and his death sentence. Soule then appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court in May 2017. In October 2017, the U.S. Supreme Court chose not to hear his case. In February 2018, the Ohio Supreme Court denied his request to reopen the appeal. In May 2020, another Ohio court also denied his appeal. While he was in prison, Soule became ill. He had a terminal disease. On January 21, 2021, he was moved from death row to the Franklin Medical Center in Columbus so he could receive end-of-life care. On February 8, 2021, Anthony Soule died in that prison hospital. He was 61 years old. After Soule's conviction, the city of Cleveland tore down his house at 12205 Imperial Avenue in December 2011. The land sat empty for years. On July 16, 2021, after Soule had died, workers broke ground on a memorial garden. It was named the Garden of 11 Angels. It was dedicated on November 6, 2021. The families of the victims and the women who survived Soule's attacks have spoken publicly over the years to remind people of what happened. The 11 women killed by Anthony Soule were Crystal Dozier, Tizanna Culver, LaShanda Long, Michelle Mason, Tonia Carmichael, Kim Yvette Smith, Imelda Hunter, Nancy Cobbs, Talasha Fortson, Janice Webb, and Diane Turner. The case was closed, but the lives lost could never be brought back. Story 4. Derek Todd Lee was born on November 5, 1968, in St. Francisville, Louisiana. St. Francisville is a small town in the northern part of the Baton Rouge area. He was the second child born to his mother, Florence Lee. His father was named Samuel Ruth. At the time of Derek's birth, his mother was only 17 years old. She did not put Samuel's name on the birth certificate. Samuel and Florence were not married. They were living with Florence's mother. Samuel Ruth left the family while Derek was still a child. Samuel went back to a woman he had been separated from. Samuel had many mental health problems. He had bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and major depression. He also had a record of domestic violence. In 1991, Derek's father was arrested in Gretna, Louisiana. He had tried to kill his second ex-wife. He pointed an empty gun at her and pulled the trigger many times. While in jail, he was found unable to stand trial. He refused to wear clothes and used toilet water in the wrong way. He was sent to a psychiatric ward in New Orleans. He stayed there until 1998, when he was seen as better. Derek's mother, Florence, raised him and his older sister. Around 1970, she married a man named Coleman Barrow. Coleman became Derek's stepfather. The family lived in a place called Independence. This was a mostly black area with houses and mobile homes. It was on land that used to be a plantation. The land was near a state highway, east of St. Francisville. Derek spent most of his childhood around his mother's family, who also lived there. Florence was described as short-tempered and bossy. Coleman worked and helped raise the children when he was not working. Derek was a restless child. People said he was hyperactive. His mother had a strict rule that children could not play inside the house. So Derek spent most of his free time outside with his relatives. He became very close to his uncle, his grandfather, and his cousins. When Derek was 9 years old, he started doing something unusual. He liked to watch other people. Sometimes he would stand completely still and stare at someone. This scared people in Independence. He also made birdwatching a hobby. But he was caught several times looking through windows at girls. Many of these girls were his cousins or his sister. He would watch them inside their homes. Derek wet his bed until he was in his early teens. He also sucked his thumb until high school. He was placed in special education classes. He went to speech therapy at West Feliciana High School. He took IQ tests during his teenage years. His scores were between 70 and 91. That is below average. Derek felt ashamed about being in special education. Other students bullied him for it. He often got into arguments at school, but most of them did not turn into fights. He left school in the 11th grade without finishing. In 1981, when Derek was 13 years old, he was arrested for the first time. He broke into a candy shop. He was found guilty of simple burglary. He was given probation and told to pay back the shop. At age 16, Derek was arrested for attempted second-degree murder. He used a knife during a fight with another teenager. The other teen was not hurt. The case did not go to court. In February 1986, a relative called the police on Derek. He had been caught many times peeping through the windows of that relative's home and the home of a female relative. In 1987, Derek and his girlfriend, Jacqueline Denise Sims, moved to Zachary, Louisiana. People called her Jackie. Derek found a job as a pipe fitter. He had trained in construction. He worked for the same company until 1988. That year, he and Jackie got married. Over the next several years, Derek kept working in construction. He worked as a pipe fitter or as a cement truck driver. His biological father and stepfather had both done that work. He worked for companies like Exxon, Turner Industries, and Formosa Plastics. But he also had long periods without a job. At the end of 1988, Jackie gave birth to their son. They named him Derek Todd Jr. after the baby was born. Derek and his wife grew apart. He started staying away from home for days at a time. He went to bars, barbecue restaurants, and Bible studies in West Feliciana Parish. At these places, he would find women to have sex with. In September 1988, Derek was convicted for unauthorized entry of an inhabited dwelling. In February 1990, Derek had an argument with Jackie. He twisted her arm and pushed her out of the house. She filed a restraining order against him. In May 1990, Derek got into a fight with his father-in-law. He was arrested for disturbing the peace. That same year, police questioned Derek. Neighbors had heard him yelling at his mother. He was accusing her of owing him money. Also, Derek's sister filed a complaint against him. She said he had removed a glass pane from her window. He did this to unlock her front door because she had told him he could not come inside. In 1992, Derek was arrested again in Zachary. He was found inside a locked home. The man who lived there had 2 daughters. In November 1992, Jackie gave birth to their daughter. They named her Doris. Right after the birth, Derek left his family. Jackie filed a form asking for help finding him because he was not supporting the children. In early 1993, Jackie prepared to take him to court for criminal neglect. Derek came back. He tried to fix the relationship for a few months. But in June 1993, he started physically abusing Jackie again. In 1993, 2 15-year-olds were cut with a bladed object at a cemetery in Zachary. From one victim's description, police later identified Derek as the likely person who did it. In July 1993, Derek was sentenced to 4 years of hard labor in East Baton Rouge Parish Prison for simple burglary. He filed for parole in July 1995 and was let out. He moved to Lake Charles in western Louisiana. 2 months later, he was arrested again for a peeping Tom offense. He was given 120 days in prison, but the sentence was suspended. Instead, he got 2 years of unsupervised probation. 3 weeks after that, Derek was arrested with a cousin and a friend. They had stolen clothes from Salvation Army donation boxes. He was charged with burglary and theft, but the charges were lowered to misdemeanors. In 1996, not long after Derek got out of prison, his father-in-law died. The man was killed in an explosion at an Amaco plant. Jackie received a settlement of $250,000. Derek took that money. He spent it on expensive cars, clothes, jewelry, and alcohol at bars. He used it to impress women. He bought a house and 1 acre of land south of St. Francisville. He also gambled away more than $5,000 at a casino. In 1997, Derek met a woman named Cassandra Green at a bar. He started a steady affair with her. In July 1997, in Zachary, a woman called the police. She said a man was prowling and peeping around her house. Derek was arrested at a cemetery. One officer recognized him from an earlier time. The officer had once given Derek a ride when his car was found broken down outside that same cemetery. In July 1999, Cassandra gave birth to Derek's 3rd child. They named him Dedrick. By November 2002, Derek and Jackie had filed for bankruptcy. They were $85,000 in debt. In late 1997, Derek Todd Lee lost his job. He was laid off. By early 1998, he had no work. He spent his nights driving around the Baton Rouge area. He looked for houses where women lived alone. He watched them from his car. He learned their routines. He noted when they came home and when they went to sleep. On the night of April 18, 1998, Derek went to a bar called Liz's Lounge. He got into an argument with his girlfriend. He left the bar angry. He got into his car and drove on Louisiana Highway 964. He drove to a house in Zachary, Louisiana. A 28-year-old woman named Randy Jane Mabrewer lived there. She had a 3-year-old son. Derek had watched her house many times before. He had stood outside her windows at night. Derek parked his car. He walked to Randy's house. He broke into her bedroom. Randy was inside. He attacked her. The attack caused severe bleeding. Randy could not fight back. Derek dragged her to the driveway. He raped her there. Then he took her keys and a pair of 5-pound dumbbells from the house. He put Randy in his car and drove away. Her body was never found. Her son slept through the whole attack. The next morning, Randy's ex-husband came to pick up the boy. He found the house empty. He called the police. For 3 years after that, Derek continued watching women. He kept working construction jobs, but was fired from several of them. He kept going to bars. He kept having affairs. He also kept peeping through windows. On September 23, 2001, Derek drove to a house on Stanford Avenue in Baton Rouge. A 41-year-old woman named Gina Wilson Green lived there. Gina had told her friends she felt unsafe. She had put cans of pepper spray at every window in her home. Derek found a way inside without breaking any locks. He attacked Gina in her kitchen. He raped her. He undressed her. Then he strangled her to death. After she was dead, he placed her body on her bed. He took her mobile phone. Several weeks later, that phone was found in a trash can in a nearby alley. For days after Gina's murder, Derek was fired from another job. He stayed unemployed for several months. He kept driving around. He kept watching women. On the morning of January 14, 2002, Derek went to a house in Addis, Louisiana. A 21-year-old woman named Geraldine Bar DeSoto lived there. She was home alone. Derek knocked on her door. He pretended he needed to use the phone. He said his car had broken down. Geraldine let him inside. As she turned to lead him to the phone, Derek picked up a heavy object. He hit her in the back of the head with it. Geraldine did not fall down. She ran to her bedroom. She grabbed her husband's shotgun, but the gun was not loaded. Derek ran after her. He took the shotgun from her hands. Geraldine ran again. She tried to get out through the back door. Derek caught her. He had a hunting knife. He stabbed her in the back and in the chest many times. Then he slit her throat. She died where she fell. Derek stomped on her body with his feet. Then he left. That afternoon, Geraldine's husband came home. He found her body. He did not know she had been stabbed at first. He thought she might have killed herself. He touched the shotgun. He got blood on his clothes. He punched a hole in the wall because he was so upset. He did not know he was ruining evidence. The police first thought he might be the killer. On May 31, 2002, Derek went to a house on Charlotte Avenue in Baton Rouge. A 22-year-old woman named Charlotte Murray Pace lived there with 2 roommates. But that day, the roommates were away. Charlotte had just graduated from Louisiana State University. She had moved into this house only 2 days before. Derek got inside. He attacked her. He raped her. Then he stabbed her 81 times with a screwdriver. Charlotte fought back for a long time, but she could not stop him. She died in her home. On July 3, 2002, Derek followed a woman through Breaux Bridge, Louisiana. He grabbed her arm and tried to pull her toward him. He was touching himself under his clothes. The woman got away and reported him. 6 days later, on July 9, 2002, Derek went to another house in Breaux Bridge. A 46-year-old woman named Diane Alexander lived there. She was home alone. Derek knocked on her door. He said he was doing construction work for a family that lived nearby. He said he could not find their address. He asked Diane to help him. Diane did not open the door all the way. She handed him a cordless phone and a phone book through the half-opened door. She told him he could use them on her front porch. Derek stood outside. He made small talk. He kept asking to speak to Diane's husband. Diane said her husband was not home. Then she went outside to get her phone and phone book back. As soon as she stepped out, Derek pushed his way inside. He grabbed her throat and started choking her. He had a knife in his pocket. He pushed Diane onto her living room floor. He set the knife down next to himself so he could touch himself. Diane grabbed the knife, but Derek took it back from her. He used the knife to cut an electrical cord. He wrapped the cord around Diane's throat. He tried to rape her, but he could not get an erection, so he stopped trying. Instead, he punched her in the face many times. Then he stomped on her stomach with his foot. Diane screamed for help. Her adult son, Herman, was in another part of the house. He heard her and ran into the living room. Derek saw Herman. He got up and ran out through the back of the house. He got into his car and drove away. He took his knife, the cut electrical cord, and Diane's purse with him. Diane called emergency services before she lost consciousness. Her son tried to follow Derek's car, but could not catch him. Diane was taken to a hospital. She was in a coma for 2 days. She spent 5 days in the hospital. She had a hairline fracture on her skull. She had cuts on her face. She had bruises on her back. But she survived. She was the only woman Derek attacked who did not die. 3 days after attacking Diane, on July 12, 2002, Derek drove to a house on Briarwood Place in Baton Rouge. A 44-year-old woman named Pamela Piglia Kinnamore lived there. People called her Pam. She had just come home from her antique shop. She went to take a bath. Derek entered through her front door. The door was not locked. Pam was sitting in the bathtub. Derek grabbed her. He beat her. He tied her up. He carried her to his truck. He drove her to a place called Whiskey Bay. This was a remote area in the Atchafalaya Basin in Iberville Parish. There, he raped her. Then he slit her throat. The cut was so deep that her head was almost cut off. He left her body there. He took a silver toe ring from her body. Later, he gave that toe ring to his wife. While Derek was driving Pam to Whiskey Bay, she was briefly conscious. 2 people saw her in the truck. A woman on the airline highway wrote down Derek's license plate number. A truck driver on Interstate 10 saw the truck and reported it using his CB radio. But by the time police got the reports, it was too late. On November 21, 2002, Derek went to a house in Lafayette, Louisiana. A 23-year-old woman named Trinisha Dean Collum lived there. People called her Dean. She was the only victim who lived outside the Baton Rouge area. Derek grabbed her from her home. He raped her. Then he beat her to death with a heavy object. He took her car and her belongings. He left them near a cemetery in Grand Coteau. 3 days later, a hunter found Dean's body in a forest near Scott, Louisiana. On March 3, 2003, Derek went to a house on Dodson Avenue in Baton Rouge. A 26-year-old woman named Carrie Lynn Yoder lived there. Derek grabbed her from her home. He raped her. He beat her. Then he strangled her to death. He took her body to Whiskey Bay, the same place where he had left Pam Kinnamore. 10 days later, someone found Carrie's body. By this time, Derek had killed 7 women. He had attacked 1 more who survived. He had also attacked and raped others whose bodies were never found. In each crime, Derek did something similar. He took the victim's mobile phone. He left no sign of forced entry at the house. He often pretended to be a homeless person or a construction worker asking for help. He used the name Anthony when he talked to victims. He was usually described as well-dressed. Most of his victims were white women, but Diane Alexander and Dean Collum were black. Derek kept living at home with his wife and children. He kept going to bars. He kept spending money he did not have. His wife did not know what he was doing at night. The police in Baton Rouge knew they had a serial killer. They had several dead women. But for a long time, they looked for the wrong person. People who saw the killer gave descriptions. They said the man was white. The FBI also made a profile. The profile said the killer was likely a white man. So the police collected DNA samples from thousands of white men in the area. They tested the DNA. None of them matched. Then the police tried a different method. They sent the crime scene DNA to a company called DNA Print Genomics. This company could tell a person's ancestry from their DNA. The company tested the DNA left at the murder scenes. The result came back. The DNA showed that the killer was 85% African. That meant the killer was a black man. The police had been looking at the wrong race for years. Now the police changed their plan. They started looking for a black man. They also had a new piece of evidence. In the murder of Geraldine DeSoto, the police had found DNA under her fingernails. She had scratched her killer during the attack. That DNA also matched a black man. On May 22, 2003, the police worked with Diane Alexander. Diane was the woman who survived the attack in Breaux Bridge. She had seen her attacker's face clearly. An FBI sketch artist sat with Diane. She described the man. The artist drew a picture of his face. The police released that sketch to the public. At the same time, the police had another clue. After Diane's attack, her son had seen Derek's car. It was a gold-colored Mitsubishi Mirage with damage to the front. The police had that information too. In Zachary, Louisiana, a small town near Baton Rouge, the local police remembered something. They had arrested a man for peeping through windows. His name was Derek Todd Lee. He matched the sketch. He was a black man. He had lived in the area for years. The Zachary police called the Baton Rouge police. They said, "We think we know who this is, and we have a DNA sample from him." The Zachary police had taken Derek's DNA 6 to 8 months earlier. That was for a different murder investigation. The Baton Rouge police took that DNA sample. They ran it against the crime scene DNA. The results came back. It was a perfect match. Derek Todd Lee was the killer. By this time, Derek knew the police were getting close. He had given a voluntary DNA sample on May 10, 2003. He did not know they already had his DNA from before, but he was scared. On that same day, he pulled his children out of school. He told his wife and children to go to Detroit for a while. Then he ran away. He left Louisiana. He traveled by bus through Michigan and Illinois. He ended up in Georgia. He hid in Atlanta. The police realized Derek had fled. They started a manhunt. The television show America's Most Wanted put Derek on its list of top 10 fugitives. The police searched for 5 days. On May 27, 2003, law enforcement found Derek. He was hiding in a motel in Atlanta. The police tried to arrest him at a homeless shelter first, but he was not there. They tried another motel. Then they found him in a neighborhood called Polar Rock in Atlanta. They arrested him. Derek did not fight. He agreed to go back to Louisiana without a fight. He was returned to Baton Rouge. He was charged with 5 murders. After his arrest, the police linked him to 2 more murders. In total, he was charged with 7 deaths. The police also suspected him in other murders from 1992 and 2002. But they did not have enough DNA to prove it. Derek went on trial for the murder of Geraldine DeSoto in August 2004. Geraldine had been stabbed to death in her home. The prosecutor did not charge Derek with first-degree murder. That would have been harder to prove because Geraldine had not been sexually assaulted. Instead, the prosecutor charged him with second-degree murder. The jury found him guilty. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Then Derek went on trial for the murder of Charlotte Murray Pace. Charlotte had been raped and stabbed 81 times. This time, the prosecutor charged him with first-degree murder. The trial took place in October 2004. The jury heard the evidence. They saw the DNA match. They heard how Charlotte fought for her life. On October 14, 2004, the jury found Derek guilty. They then decided on his punishment. They sentenced him to death by lethal injection. Derek's lawyers argued that he should not be executed. They said he had a low IQ. His test scores averaged 65. A score below 69 is considered intellectual disability. But the court said he was still fit to stand trial. On January 16, 2008, the Louisiana Supreme Court upheld his murder conviction and his death sentence. Derek was sent to death row at Louisiana State Penitentiary. He spent 12 years there. He did not stop being sick. He had heart disease. In January 2016, he became very ill. He was taken to Lane Memorial Hospital in Zachary, Louisiana. That was the same town where he had lived and where some of his victims had died. On January 21st, 2016, Derek Todd Lee died at the hospital. The cause of death was complications from heart disease. He was 47 years old. He never received a lethal injection. He died of natural causes before the state could execute him. Diane Alexander, the woman who survived, tried to claim a reward. The Lafayette Crime Stoppers had offered $100,000 for information leading to the killer's arrest. Diane believed she deserved the money. She had given the description that led to the sketch. She had helped catch Derek. But Crime Stoppers said no. They said the reward expired on August 1st, 2003. They said Diane did not call their tip hotline. She went directly to the police. A court decided in favor of Crime Stoppers. Diane did not get the reward. The families of the victims were left with their loss. Randy Mabreur's body was never found. Gina Green, Jerlyn DeSoto, Charlotte Pace, Pam Kinnamore, Dean Collum, and Carrie Yoder were all gone. Their families attended the trials. They watched Derek. Some of them spoke in court. They described their pain. After Derek died, some families said they wished he had faced execution. Others said they were relieved the case was finally over. The police later learned that another serial killer, Sean Vincent Gillis, had been killing women in the same area at the same time as Derek. That made the investigation even harder. But Derek's crimes were his own. His early life of watching women, his arrests for peeping, his violence, and his lies all led to one place. He became one of Louisiana's most deadly serial killers, and he died on a hospital bed, not in the execution chamber. The story of Derek Todd Lee ended not with justice served by the state, but with his own heart giving out before the state could take his life. Story 5. Stephen Sean Griffiths was born on December 24, 1969, in Dewsbury, West Yorkshire. Dewsbury was a town in the north of England. His family lived in that area. Not much is known about his parents or whether he had siblings. But from a young age, Stephen showed signs that something was not right with him. He did not behave like other children. He had trouble connecting with people. He kept to himself most of the time. When Stephen was 17 years old, he did something very violent. He attacked a supermarket manager with a knife. The attack was not provoked. That means the manager did nothing to start a fight. Stephen just pulled out a knife and hurt him. The police arrested Stephen. He went to court. The judge sent him to prison for 3 years for that attack. While Stephen was in custody, he told people that he saw himself becoming a murderer. He said he knew that one day he would kill someone. The psychiatrists who examined him in prison also saw something dangerous in him. They wrote reports saying that Stephen had fantasies about becoming a serial killer. A serial killer is someone who kills many people over time. In 1991, when Stephen was 21 or 22 years old, psychiatrists gave him a formal diagnosis. They said he was a schizoid psychopath. That means he did not feel emotions the way normal people do. He did not care about other people's feelings. He did not feel guilty when he did bad things. The next year, in 1992, Stephen committed another violent crime. He held a knife to a girl's throat. The police arrested him again. The judge sent him to prison for 2 years. After he got out of prison, Stephen tried to live a normal life. He went to school. He studied criminology. Criminology is the study of crime, criminals, and why people break the law. Stephen was a semi-professional student. That means he studied at a university, but also did other work sometimes. In 2009, Stephen was accepted into the University of Bradford. He wanted to write a PhD. A PhD is a very high-level research degree. His subject was homicide studies. Homicide means killing another person. So Stephen was studying murder while living a quiet life in Bradford. Stephen lived in a flat. The flat was on Homefield Court in Bradford. The Housing Association owned the building. The Housing Association is a group that rents out flats to people. The police had started watching Stephen. They had seen him reading books about how to cut up a body. Dismemberment means cutting a body into pieces. The police did not have enough evidence to arrest him, but they were worried. They contacted the Housing Association. They told the Housing Association about their concerns. The Housing Association agreed to help. They put in a better CCTV system. CCTV stands for closed-circuit television. It is cameras that record what happens in and around the building. The Housing Association put the cameras in because they expected something bad might happen one day. Stephen did not know that the police were watching him. He continued his daily life. He went to the university. He read his books. He stayed in his flat. He kept to himself. He did not have many friends. He did not have a normal social life. People who saw him thought he was strange, but no one knew what he was thinking. Stephen Griffiths lived alone in his flat on Homefield Court in Bradford. He did not have a girlfriend. He did not have close friends. He spent most of his time reading and studying. But he also had dark desires that he kept hidden from everyone. Bradford had a number of women who worked as sex workers. These women sold sex for money. They often worked on the streets at night. They were vulnerable because they were alone with strangers. Stephen knew this. He chose these women as his targets because he thought they would not be missed right away. The first woman was Susan Rushworth. She was 43 years old. On June 22, 2009, Susan was working on the streets of Bradford. Stephen approached her. He pretended to be a normal client. He paid her for sex. Then he took her to his flat. Once they were inside, Stephen killed her. He did not use a gun. He had other weapons. The police later learned that Stephen owned hunting weapons. He had read books about how to cut up bodies. After he killed Susan, he dismembered her body. That means he cut her into pieces. He then got rid of the pieces. To this day, no part of Susan Rushworth has ever been found. The police searched but found nothing. She simply vanished. After Susan disappeared, the police were told she was missing. But sex workers sometimes go missing for a few days. The police did not connect her disappearance to a killer right away. They listed her as a missing person. Stephen went back to his normal life. He continued his studies. No one suspected him. Then on April 26, 2010, Stephen struck again. The second victim was Shelley Armitage. She was 31 years old. Like Susan, Shelley was a sex worker in Bradford. She went out on the streets to find clients. Stephen found her. He acted like a normal customer. He paid her. He took her to his flat. Once inside, he killed her. Then he cut her body into pieces. He disposed of the pieces. He thought he had hidden all the evidence. But this time, Stephen made a mistake. He did not get rid of every piece. Some parts of Shelley's body ended up in the River Aire. The River Aire flows through Shipley, which is near Bradford. Stephen probably threw the pieces into the river at night. He thought the water would carry them away. He thought no one would find them. Less than 1 month later, Stephen killed again. The third victim was Suzanne Blamires. She was 36 years old. On May 21, 2010, Suzanne was working as a sex worker in Bradford. Stephen approached her. He did the same thing. He paid her. He took her to his flat. He killed her. He cut her body into pieces. He disposed of the pieces in the River Aire. 4 days later, on May 25, 2010, someone found parts of a body in the River Aire in Shipley. The person called the police. The police came and collected the remains. They could see that the body had been cut up on purpose. This was not an accident. A crime had been committed. The police later identified those remains as belonging to Susan Blamires. The police then searched more of the river. They found other human tissue. They tested it. They learned that these other pieces belonged to Shelley Armitage, the woman who had disappeared on April 26th. 2010. So now the police knew that at least 2 women had been killed and cut up. The police also remembered Susan Rushworth, who had disappeared on June 22, 2009. They started to suspect that the same person had killed all 3 women, but they did not yet know who. During this time, the police had already been watching Stephen Griffiths for 2 years. They had seen him reading books about dismemberment. They had seized some of his hunting weapons. They had told the housing association to put up better CCTV cameras. But they did not have enough proof to arrest him. They did not know for sure that he was the killer. They only had suspicions. The CCTV cameras that the housing association had installed were recording everything that happened near Stephen's flat. The police decided to check the footage. They wanted to see if Stephen had brought any women to his flat on the nights when the victims disappeared. The police checked the CCTV footage from the cameras outside Stephen Griffith's flat on Homefield Court. The cameras had recorded everything. The police looked at the dates when the women had disappeared. On those dates, the footage showed Stephen bringing women into his flat. The women matched the descriptions of Susan Rushworth, Shelley Armitage, and Susan Blamires. The footage also showed Stephen leaving his flat with large bags. He carried the bags toward the River Aire. This was strong evidence. On May 24, 2010, the police decided to arrest Stephen Griffiths. They went to his flat. They knocked on the door. Stephen opened it. The police told him he was under arrest for the murders of the 3 women. Stephen did not resist. He did not act surprised. He went with the police quietly. The police took Stephen to the police station. They questioned him. During the questioning, Stephen gave his name as the Crossbow Cannibal. He said this out loud to the officers. The police wrote this down. They did not know yet why he chose that name, but they later learned that he owned a crossbow, which is a weapon that shoots bolts like arrows. Stephen appeared in a magistrate's court. A magistrate's court is a lower court where minor cases start, but this was a serious case, so it was sent to a higher court. Stephen was then taken to the Crown Court. The Crown Court handles major crimes like murder. At the Crown Court, the judge ordered Stephen to be held in custody until his trial. He was sent to Wakefield Prison to wait. On June 7, 2010, Stephen appeared in the Crown Court again. This time he appeared through a video link from the prison. The judge set a trial date for November 16, 2010. Stephen said nothing important during this hearing. The trial began on November 16, 2010, at Leeds Crown Court. The prosecutors presented the evidence. They showed the CCTV footage. They showed the human remains found in the river. They showed the books on dismemberment that Stephen had been reading. They showed that Stephen had hunting weapons in his flat. The prosecutors explained how Stephen had lured the women to his flat, killed them, cut up their bodies, and thrown the pieces into the river. Stephen did not fight the case. On December 21, 2010, he pleaded guilty to all 3 murders. That meant he admitted that he had killed Susan Rushworth, Shelley Armitage, and Susan Blamires. He did not need a jury to decide if he was guilty. He told the court himself that he had done it. The same day, the judge, Mr. Justice Openshaw, sentenced Stephen Griffiths. The judge said that Stephen was dangerous and would never be safe to release. The judge gave Stephen a whole life order. That means Stephen will never be eligible for parole. Parole is when a prisoner is released early for good behavior. A whole life order means Stephen will stay in prison for the rest of his natural life. He will die in prison. After the trial, more information came out. The police revealed that they had been watching Stephen for 2 years before the murders. They had seen him reading the dismemberment books. They had seized his weapons, but they did not have enough evidence to stop him. The housing association had installed the better CCTV cameras because the police were worried. Those same cameras later helped catch Stephen. While in prison, Stephen tried to kill himself several times. He did not succeed. In 2011, he went on a hunger strike. That means he stopped eating food. He refused to eat for 120 days. During that time, he also avoided talking to any other people. The prison staff had to force him to eat or give him medical care. But he survived. The police also tried to question Stephen about other missing women. They asked him if he had killed anyone else. At first, Stephen said he had killed 5 sex workers in total. That would mean 2 more victims besides the 3 he was convicted for. But after his trial, Stephen refused to speak to the police anymore. He would not answer their questions, so the police could not investigate those other possible murders. No additional charges were ever filed against him. The families of Susan Rushworth, Shelley Armitage, and Suzanne Blamires were left with the pain of what had happened. Susan's body was never found. Her family never got to bury her. The other 2 families knew that parts of their loved ones had been found in a river. They had to live with that knowledge. Stephen Griffiths remains in a high-security prison in England. He is watched closely at all times. He will never leave prison. His name is now remembered as one of Britain's most brutal killers. And the 3 women he murdered are remembered as victims who deserved better. The case of the Bradford murders was closed when Stephen Griffiths was sentenced to life in prison with a whole life order, and he will never be released. Story 6. Dennis Lynn Rader was born on March 9, 1945, in Pittsburgh, Kansas. He was the oldest of 4 sons. His mother was Dorothea May Rader. She worked as a bookkeeper. His father was William Elvin Rader. He had served in the United States Marine Corps. Later, he worked for the Kansas Gas Service. Rader's parents were members of the Zion Lutheran Church in Pittsburgh. They had Dennis baptized there. Both parents worked long hours. Because of this, they did not pay much attention to their children at home. Years later, Rader said he felt neglected as a child. His father was described as strict and religious, but his father was not physically abusive. The family moved to Wichita, Kansas. As a boy, Rader liked reading novels and comic books. He also enjoyed fishing and being in the Cub Scouts. However, even as a young child, he had dark sexual fantasies. He thought about torturing women who were trapped and could not fight back. He also hurt and killed small animals. He would hang them or torture them. This behavior is called zoosadism. Rader also had other unusual sexual behaviors. He liked to watch women without them knowing. This is called voyeurism. He would dress in women's clothing, including underwear that he had stolen. He would also put ropes around his neck or arms while touching himself. This is called autoerotic asphyxiation. Rader went to Wichita Heights High School. He did not play sports. He did not join after-school activities. Other students said he had no sense of humor. He always stayed in the background. He spent most of his time outside of school working at a local grocery store. He was a bag boy and stocked shelves. He did this to save money for a car. He graduated from high school in 1963. Then he went to Kansas Wesleyan University. He did not get good grades. He left after 1 year. In June 1966, Rader joined the United States Air Force. He completed basic training and technical school in Texas. Then he was sent to Brookley Air Force Base in Mobile, Alabama. He worked as an antenna installer and maintenance specialist. Later, he was sent to Turkey, Greece, and South Korea. In January 1968, he was transferred to Japan. He spent 6 months at Kadena Air Base in Okinawa. Then he spent 25 months at Tachikawa Airfield in Tokyo. He earned a Good Conduct Medal and a Marksmanship Ribbon. He also received a National Defense Service Medal because he served during the Vietnam War. Rader later said the Air Force taught him about sex. He was honorably discharged on August 12, 1970. He had reached the rank of Staff Sergeant. After that, he served in the Air Force Reserve until June 20, 1972. Around that same time, he was hired by the Coleman Company. Coleman made outdoor recreational equipment. 1 year after his discharge, Rader bought a house in Park City, Kansas. Park City is a suburb of Wichita. He then went to Butler County Community College in El Dorado, Kansas. In 1973, he earned an associate degree in electronics engineering. After that, he attended Wichita State University. In 1979, he graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree. His major was Administration of Justice. Rader first worked in the meat department of an IGA supermarket. His mother was a bookkeeper there. From mid-1972 to mid-1973, he worked as an assembler for Coleman. 2 women he would later kill also worked at Coleman at some point. Their names were Julie Otero and Catherine Bright. But at this time, none of them knew each other. On May 22, 1971, Rader married a woman named Paula Dietz. She worked as a secretary for the American Legion. The wedding took place at Christ Lutheran Church. They later had 2 children. Their daughter was named Carrie. Their son was named Brian. The family lived in the house Rader bought in Park City. Rader was a member of Christ Lutheran Church. He also became a Cub Scout leader. His neighbors and co-workers thought he was normal and polite. No one suspected anything strange about him. From 1974 to 1988, Rader worked at the local Wichita office of ADT Security Services. ADT sold and installed home security alarms. His job was to install alarms in people's homes. Many of his customers were homeowners who were afraid of break-ins. Some of them were afraid of the very crimes that Rader would later commit. His co-workers gave him a nickname, Blue Book Man. This was because he always followed the rules. He would scold others for talking during work hours. In 1989, Rader worked as a field operations supervisor for the United States Census in the Wichita area. In May 1991, he got a new job. He became a dog catcher and compliance officer for the city of Park City. In this role, he was known for being very strict. He would measure people's grass to see if it was too long. He would film neighbors' houses from his backyard. One woman said he killed her dog for no reason. 2 women filed restraining orders against him in the 1980s. Another woman filed one in the mid-1990s. One of them moved to a different address to avoid him. Throughout all these years, Rader stayed married to Paula. His children grew up in the house in Park City. No one in his family knew about his secret fantasies or his hidden behaviors. To them, he was a husband and father who went to work, went to church, and led scout meetings. On January 15, 1974, Rader committed his first murders. He had chosen a family to target 2 months earlier. He saw a woman named Julia Otero leaving her home to take her children to school. He followed her and watched the family for 2 to 3 weeks. The Otero family lived in Wichita at 803 North Edgemore Street. The parents were Joseph Sr., age 38, and Julia, age 33. Their children were Joseph II, age 9, and Josephine, age 11. 3 older children lived in the home as well, but they were at school on the day of the attack. On the morning of the murders, Rader parked his car and walked to the Otero house. He climbed over a fence into the backyard. He cut the phone lines. Then the family's dog was let out the back door. Joseph too came outside with the dog. Rader confronted the boy at gunpoint and forced his way inside. At first, the family thought he was playing a joke. Rader told them it was not a joke. He showed them his .22 caliber pistol loaded with hollow point bullets. He told them he was wanted in California. He ordered them to lie on the living room floor. Then he led them into a bedroom. He tied them with rope he had brought with him. Joseph and Joey were placed on the floor. Julia and Josie were tied on the bed. After they were tied, the family complained about poor blood circulation. Joseph Sr. had a cracked rib from a car accident. Rader put a pillow under him to help. Rader later said that at this point, he decided to kill them. He put a plastic bag over Joseph Sr., head and tied it with rope. Joseph Sr. chewed a hole in the bag. Rader replaced it with a new bag. Joseph Sr. slowly suffocated. Next, Rader strangled Julia with a rope. She regained consciousness at one point and begged for mercy for her children. Rader killed her anyway. Then Rader put a plastic bag over Joey's head. He added 2 t-shirts and another bag on top. Rader pulled up a chair and watched the boy struggle until he died. After killing the rest of the family, Rader took Josephine down to the basement. He took off her clothes. He tied a noose around a sewage pipe. He asked her if she had a camera so he could take pictures. She said no. She asked what was going to happen to her. Rader told her she would be in heaven with the rest of her family. Then he hanged her. He touched himself while watching her struggle on the rope. After leaving the house, he got into the Otero family car and drove it to a grocery store parking lot. He realized he had dropped a knife in the backyard, so he drove the car back to the house to get the knife. The 3 older children came home from school later that day and found the bodies. On April 4th, 1974, Rader chose his next victim. He saw a woman named Catherine Bright, age 21, entering her house with a friend. He called her Project Lights Out. He did not know that her younger brother Kevin, age 19, also lived in the house. Rader later said he tried to stay away from males to make the killings easier. But he went ahead anyway. He broke into the Bright house through the rear sliding glass door. No one was home yet. He began sweeping up the broken glass to hide what he had done. While waiting, his pistol accidentally fired. He worried the smell of gunpowder would alert Catherine when she arrived. When Catherine arrived, her brother Kevin was with her. Rader told them he was a wanted man from California. He said he needed money and food. He forced them into a bedroom. He made Kevin tie up his sister. Then Rader tied Kevin himself. He used bandanas and other household items as restraints. He did this so the crime would look different from the Otero murders. He put Kevin in a different room and tied him to a bedpost. He tied Catherine to a chair. He turned on the stereo in the living room to cover up any sounds. He said he learned this trick from detective magazines. Rader went back to Kevin's room to strangle him, but Kevin had freed himself. Rader pulled out his gun. A struggle started. Rader shot Kevin in the forehead. Then he tried to strangle Kevin again. Kevin fought back again. Rader fired 2 more shots. One hit just above Kevin's mouth. The other grazed him. Kevin played dead until Rader left the room. Then he ran out of the house. He flagged down neighbors. They took him to the hospital and called the police. Kevin survived. Rader went back to Catherine's room. She asked about the gunshots. Rader told her he had shot her brother. She began fighting back. She was too strong for Rader to strangle as he had planned. So he took a knife and stabbed her many times under her ribs. During the struggle, Rader heard Kevin calling for help from outside. Once Rader thought Catherine was dead, he grabbed her keys and tried to start her truck. It did not start, so he ran to his own car, which he had parked at Wichita State University. When police arrived at the house, Catherine was still alive. She was holding a telephone but could not speak clearly. She died during emergency surgery from multiple stab wounds and strangulation. Rader did not kill again for nearly 3 years. On March 17, 1977, he planned to kill a different victim. But that person was not home when he broke in. He became frustrated. He decided to find a random person instead. He saw a 5-year-old boy named Stephen walking home. Stephen had been buying soup for his sick mother. Rader approached the boy and said he was a detective. He showed Stephen a photo of his own wife and daughter. He asked if the boy could identify the people in the photo. Stephen mistakenly said the photo showed his mother and sister. Rader followed Stephen back to his home. The mother was Shirley Vian Relford, age 26. Rader asked her to look at the same photo. Then he pulled a gun. He said he was a wanted man and that he was robbing her and her 3 children. He tried to tie up the children but had trouble. so he forced the children into a bathroom. He had Shirley help him block the bathroom door. He gave the children toys and supplies to keep them quiet. He told them he would shoot them if they tried to break out. Then he took Shirley to the back bedroom. She vomited before he tied her to a bedpost by her legs. He handcuffed her. He put a plastic bag over her head and strangled her with a rope. During the attack, she was sick and asked for water. Rader gave her water before killing her. Rader later said he planned to kill the children as well. But the family phone rang. One of the children shouted that someone was coming to visit soon. Rader fled the house. On December 8, 1977, Rader killed Nancy Jo Fox, age 25. He had been watching her for some time. He called her Project Foxhunt. He broke into her home through a back window. She was not there at first. When she returned from work, she screamed at him to leave. She threatened to call the police. Rader told her the phone lines were cut. He said he would tie her up, take photos of her, and rape her. She asked to use the bathroom. He let her go. He told her to come out partly undressed. He began taking off his own clothes. When she came out, he ordered her to lie down. She resisted when he tried to remove her remaining clothing. He put handcuffs on her. She asked why the handcuffs were needed. He said, "That's part of my deal. I got to have them or it won't work." Then he climbed on top of her and wrapped his belt around her neck. He loosened and tightened the belt many times. He let her almost lose consciousness and then brought her back. Finally, he killed her. The next morning, Rader called the police from a payphone. He told them where to find Fox's body. The call was recorded. In 1979, Rader tried to kill a 63-year-old woman named Anna Williams. He broke into her home and waited for hours. She did not come back because she was visiting friends. She returned much later than expected. Rader became angry and left. He later said he was absolutely livid that she escaped. Between 1974 and 1979, Rader also sent letters to police and newspapers. In October 1974, he sent a letter to the Wichita Eagle. He used the name BTK for the first time. He took responsibility for the Otero murders. He gave details that had not been released to the public. 3 brothers in psychiatric care had falsely confessed to the murders. Rader wrote, "I did it by myself and no one's help." In February 1978, he sent a letter to a Wichita TV station. He demanded more media attention. He wrote, "How many do I have to kill before I get a name in the paper or some national attention?" He suggested the name BTK for himself. He said he was driven to kill by something he called Factor X. He said this same thing motivated Jack the Ripper and the Son of Sam. The letter was traced to a copy machine at Wichita State University. Rader was a student there at the time. In June 1979, he left a letter outside Anna Williams' home. It read, "Oh Anna, why didn't you appear?" and was signed BTK. After 1979, Rader stopped sending letters. He went quiet for many years, but he did not stop killing. On April 27, 1985, Rader killed a woman named Maureen Hedge, age 53. She lived only a few houses away from him in Park City. He called her Project Cookie. He wanted to see if he could kill a neighbor and get away with it. That night, he was at a Cub Scouts outing. He faked a headache. He blamed it on rainy weather. He left the outing, saying he needed to drive home. Instead, he drove to a deserted area and changed out of his scout clothes. Then he drove to a bowling alley. He ordered a beer. He swished it in his mouth and splashed it on his face and clothes. He called a taxi and pretended to be drunk. The taxi dropped him off one street away from his own home and Hedge's home. He cut the phone line to Hedge's house. Then he broke in and hid in a bedroom closet. Hedge came home with her boyfriend. Rader waited in the closet until the boyfriend left and Hedge went to bed. When he was sure she was in bed, he came out of the closet and turned on the bathroom light. Hedge woke up and screamed. He overpowered her, handcuffed her, and strangled her with his bare hands. He then removed her body from the house. He wanted to tie her up and take pictures. He found her car keys and took some personal items as souvenirs. He stripped her body and dragged it to her car. He drove to Christ Lutheran Church. He had keys to the church. He dragged the body inside. He covered the windows with garbage bags so no light could escape. He posed the body and took photographs. As daylight came, he cleaned the scene, removed the bags, turned off the lights, and put the body back in the trunk. He drove a short distance and dumped the body in a ditch. He covered it with brush. Her body was found on May 5th. On September 16, 1986, Rader killed Vicky Wegerle, age 28. He saw her get into her car while he was working for ADT. He watched her for a short time. He heard her playing piano in her house. He called her Project Piano. He used his ADT hard hat and a telephone company manual to disguise himself as a phone technician. First, he went to the neighbor's house and pretended to do phone work. Then he knocked on Vicky's door. Because he had been at the neighbor's house, she was less suspicious. Once inside, he told her he needed to check the telephone terminals. She led him to the phone near the dining room table. He made small talk while pretending to check the phone. Then he pulled a gun and told her to go to the bedroom. She said her husband Bill would be home soon. Rader did not stop. He forced her into the bedroom. She broke free and scratched his face hard. He later said he probably still had the scratch somewhere. Her dog started barking because of the struggle. The windows were open. Rader did not know when her husband would return. He killed her anyway and took pictures of her body for sexual purposes. He fled in her car. He passed her husband on the way out. He parked her car in a grocery store parking lot 2 blocks away. Then he drove home in his own car. As he passed the Wegerle house, he saw paramedics responding. For nearly 20 years, some police and community members believed Vicky's husband Bill was the killer. On January 18, 1991, Rader killed Dolores Davis, age 62. He had watched her near his home. He called her Project Dogside because of dog kennels near her house. He had studied her home many times to figure out how to get in. That night, he was at a Trappers Scouts event called the Dead of Winter, outing at a county park. He set up camp. Then he made up a story and left. He drove to his parents' house and changed out of his scout uniform. Then he drove to Park City Baptist Church. He had a key to the church because of his scout duties. He left the church and walked through wheat fields and a cemetery to get to Davis's home. The cold was so severe that he broke in by smashing a window instead of trying a quieter method. Between 10:30 and 11 p.m., he arrived at her home. He saw her reading through her window blinds. He waited until the lights went out. Then he threw a cinder block through the sliding glass door. Davis confronted him. Rader said he would tie her up and leave her, but he would take her car and some food. She refused and told him to leave. He then said he had a gun, a club, and a knife. She became cooperative. He got her car keys and pretended to look for food in the kitchen. She begged for her life. He strangled her with pantyhose. He had planned to stay and take photos of her body, but she falsely told him she was expecting company. So he left sooner than planned. He used a bedspread to drag her body to her car and put her in the trunk. He drove her car to a lake and dumped her body in the bushes. Then he drove back to her home and threw her keys on the roof. He had read that police had looked for the Otero family's keys on their roof. He walked back to the church to get his car. Then he drove back to the lake, collected Davis's body, and drove to a rural area. He dumped the body again under a bridge. He did not take pictures because he needed to return to the scouts' camp before anyone noticed he was gone. Her body was found on February 1st, 1991. After 1991, Rader stopped killing for 13 years. But during this time, he continued to have fantasies. He took pictures of himself dressed in women's clothing and masks while tied up. He later admitted he was pretending to be his victims. He also committed many burglaries. He stole underwear, jewelry, and money. No one in his family or community suspected him. In 2004, raiders saw a newspaper article about the BTK case being unsolved after 30 years. He later said he was kind of bored, so he decided to start sending letters again. For many years, the BTK case was considered cold. Police had no solid suspects. By the early 2000s, many young people in Wichita had never even heard of the BTK murders. A local writer named Robert Beatty started writing a book about the killings. In January 2004, a newspaper called the Wichita Eagle published a story with the headline, "BTK Case Unsolved, 30 Years Later." Rader saw that story. He later said he was bored, so he decided to start sending letters again. On March 19, 2004, the Wichita Eagle received a letter. The person used the fake name, Bill Thomas Kilman. The letter claimed that the writer had murdered Vicki Wegerle in 1986. Inside the envelope were photographs of the crime scene. There was also a photocopy of Vicki Wegerle's driver's license. That license had been stolen from her home at the time of her murder. Before this letter, police did not know for sure that BTK had killed Vicki Wegerle. Some people thought her husband had done it. Now police had new evidence. They took DNA from under Vicki Wegerle's fingernails. That DNA had been preserved from the original investigation. This gave police a DNA profile of the killer. In May 2004, a TV station called Cake received a letter. It had chapter headings for something called the BTK story. It also contained fake identification cards and a word puzzle. On June 9, 2004, a package was found taped to a stop sign in Wichita. Inside were graphic descriptions of the Otero murders. There was also a sketch labeled, "The Sexual Thrill is My Bill." In July, a package was dropped into a public library return slot. It claimed that BTK was responsible for the death of a 19-year-old named Jake Allen in Argonia, Kansas. That was false. Jake Allen's death was ruled a suicide. Rader had lied to confuse the police. In his letters, Rader gave some true information about himself. He said he had been in the military. He said he had a fascination with trains. But he also gave false information. He claimed he was born in 1939. He said he moved around often as a child. Neither of those statements was true. He was trying to mislead the investigators. In October 2004, a manila envelope was dropped into a UPS box in Wichita. It contained cards with pictures of children being tortured or tied up. It also had a poem threatening the lead investigator, Lieutenant Ken Landwehr. There was a false autobiography with many made-up details about Rader's life. In December 2004, police found another package in Murdoch Park in Wichita. Inside was Nancy Fox's driver's license. That license had been stolen from her crime scene. There was also a doll. The doll's hands and feet were tied. A plastic bag was tied over its head. In January 2005, Rader tried to leave a cereal box in the back of a pickup truck at a Home Depot store in Wichita. The truck's owner saw the box and threw it in the trash. Rader later asked in a message what had happened to the box. Police went through the trash and found it. They looked at surveillance video from the parking lot. The video showed a distant figure driving a black Jeep Cherokee. That person had left the box in the pickup truck. In February 2005, more postcards were sent to Cake. Another cereal box was found at a rural location. Inside was another bound doll. In his letters to police, Rader asked a question. He wanted to know if his writings could be traced if he put them on a floppy disk. Police decided to answer him. They placed a classified ad in the Wichita Eagle. The ad said, "Rex, it will be okay." They wanted him to think it was safe to use a disk. On February 16, 2005, Rader sent a purple Memorex floppy disk to a Wichita TV station called KSES-TV. The disk had a capacity of 1.44 megabytes. Inside the package was also a letter, a gold-colored necklace with a large medallion, and a photocopy of a book cover. The book was called Rules of Prey. It was a novel about a serial killer. Police examined the floppy disk. Rader had deleted a Microsoft Word document from the disk. But he did not know that deleted files can still be recovered. The metadata was still stored on the disk. Metadata is hidden information inside a computer file. The recovered document was a meeting agenda for a church. The metadata showed that the document had been written and edited by someone named Dennis. It also showed the words Christ Lutheran Church. Police searched on the internet. They found that a man named Dennis Rader was the president of the church council at Christ Lutheran Church in Wichita. Police drove to Rader's home in Park City. They saw a black Jeep Cherokee parked outside. This matched the vehicle seen on the Home Depot surveillance video. Police now had strong circumstantial evidence, but they needed more direct evidence to arrest him. Police obtained a warrant to test a medical sample from Rader's daughter. The sample was a Pap smear taken at a medical clinic at Kansas State University. DNA from the Pap smear was compared to the DNA found under Vicky Wegrel's fingernails. The test showed a familial match. This meant the killer was closely related to Rader's daughter. The only male relative living in the area was her father, Dennis Rader. Combined with the church document and the black Jeep, police had enough evidence to make an arrest. On February 25, 2005, shortly after noon, Rader was arrested while driving near his home in Park City. An officer asked him, "Mr. Rader, do you know why you're going downtown?" Rader replied, "Oh, I have suspicions why." Officers from the Wichita Police Department, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, and the ATF searched Rader's home and car. They found a pair of black pantyhose in a shed. They also found a cylindrical container and computer equipment. They searched Christ Lutheran Church, Rader's office, and the Park City Library. The next morning, the Wichita Police Chief Norman Williams held a press conference. He said, "The bottom line, BTK is arrested." While being questioned, Rader asked about the death penalty. He asked several times what his sentence would be. He asked if he would be placed in a special section of prison or with the loonies in the general population. At one point, he told an officer to write BTK on the lid of his cup before putting it in the refrigerator. He did not want his own name on it. On February 28, 2005, Rader was charged in the Sedgwick County District Court with 10 counts of first-degree murder. His bail was set at $10 million. A public defender was appointed to represent him. On May 3rd, the judge entered not guilty pleas on Rader's behalf because Rader did not speak at his arraignment. On June 27, 2005, which was the scheduled trial date, Rader changed his plea to guilty. He stood in court and described the murders in detail. He called them his projects. His voice was cold. He showed no emotion. He did not apologize. He described how he had planned each killing, how he had carried it out, and how he had taken souvenirs. On August 18, 2005, the sentencing hearing took place. Family members of the victims made statements. They described their pain and loss. Then Rader spoke. He talked for 30 minutes. His words rambled and did not make much sense. The prosecutor later said Rader's speech sounded like an Academy Awards acceptance speech. Rader apologized, but his apology did not seem genuine. Psychologists later said this is common among psychopaths. They cannot truly understand the emotional meaning of words. The judge sentenced Rader to 10 consecutive life sentences. This meant he would serve one life sentence after another. The minimum time he would have to serve before being eligible for parole was 175 years. Kansas did not have the death penalty at the time when Rader committed his murders. The death penalty had been reinstated in Kansas in 1994, but all of Rader's crimes happened before that year, so he could not be sentenced to death. The day after his sentencing, August 19, 2005, Rader was moved to the El Dorado Correctional Facility in Butler County, Kansas. He lives there in solitary confinement for his own protection. Prison officials say he will likely stay in solitary until he dies. In April 2006, the Kansas Department of Corrections gave him some privileges because of his good behavior. He was allowed to have a television, a radio, books, and art supplies. Prosecutors had argued against this. They said images of women and children and news stories about his murders would allow him to relive his sadistic fantasies. After Rader was arrested, police in Wichita and other cities looked into unsolved cases. They wanted to see if Rader had committed more murders. They especially looked at cases from after 1994, when the death penalty returned to Kansas. Police in nearby states also examined cold cases. After many investigations, no additional murders were found that could be proven to be Rader's work. Police believe he probably committed only the 10 murders he was charged with. However, they are certain he stalked and planned to kill many other people. In his police interview, Rader said, "There are a lot of lucky people." Rader's wife, Paula Dietz, filed for an emergency divorce on July 26, 2005. The normal waiting period of 60 days was waived. The divorce was granted. All of Rader's crimes had been committed while he was married to her. Neither she nor their children had suspected anything. Their family home in Park City was demolished in March 2007. In 2019, Rader's daughter, Carrie Rawson, published a book about her life. The book was called A Serial Killer's Daughter: My Story of Faith, Love, and Overcoming. She said she writes to her father and has forgiven him. But she still struggles to understand how she could have had a normal childhood while being raised by a serial killer. In 2023, she visited Rader in prison. She reported that he was rotting and unhappy. She said he had lost about 7 inches of height and was using a wheelchair. In August 2023, authorities announced they had found possible trophies from victims when they searched evidence from Rader's home. They began looking into whether Rader might have been involved in other disappearances and murders. One case they looked at was the disappearance of a 16-year-old girl named Cynthia Dawn Kinney in Oklahoma in 1976. Rader has denied involvement. The sheriff in that county believes Rader is lying because he fears being tried in Oklahoma, where he could receive the death penalty. Dennis Rader, known as Beat K, remains in prison serving 10 consecutive life sentences. He will never be released.